Hi.
No, mate, all right.
Yeah, good. Thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Cheers, yeah. Cheers for jumping on.
No problem.
Whereabouts are you?
So I'm in kind of Haworth, which is like Bronte country, just like on the edge of Bradford.
Ah, okay. Because I mean, yeah, the long blondes kind of came from different places, didn't they? Are you Yorkshire based? Is that where you grew
Oh,
up?
I am now. Yeah, like I'm originally from. I grew up in Birmingham, so that's where I'm from originally.
Ah, okay.
And then to Sheffield to uni, where I kind of met the band, was there for a bit, and then moved to Leeds, and then been out here for 15 years now.
All right, cool. So are you the youngest of the band? Is that right? I think Kate was saying.
I was the youngest, yeah, not by much. Like kind of Dorian and Catherine were kind of the year above me at uni, and then Emma and Kate were kind of a bit older than them. I was like the baby of the group, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So what did you do at uni? What did you go to Sheffield for?
So I did my degree was in sociology, but I guess I went to Sheffield because I grew up in like the suburbs of Birmingham, really. So like not quite in Birmingham, like a bit on the edge, like about 45 minutes out, maybe. So I kind of knew that I wanted to be in a city, really, like where there was like stuff happening, I guess. And I really loved Cult, and I really loved kind of Warp and all that kind of electronic stuff that was kind of happening a little bit as well. So I kind of went to Sheffield and was just like, yeah, I really like it here. This is kind of the city for me, I guess.
Yeah, I guess not really spoke to too many people who kind of grew up in Birmingham. Was like a decent kind of nightlife there in terms of like the alternative scene, if you like.
Not really, if I'm honest with you. I think you had like Snobs in Birmingham, which was this like big like indie club in Birmingham, and then there was like Blast Off, which was in Wolverhampton. Like where I grew up was kind of just in between Birmingham and Wolverhampton. So if you kind of wanted to go to like an indie night, that's what you would do. You'd have to like get the bus in and then get like the night bus back, and it was like not massively easy to do, I guess. You had like I guess prior to me being a sort of teenager in Birmingham, like where I'm actually from is a place called Stourbridge, which is where like Pop Will Eat Itself are from, and like Ned's Atomic Dustbin. So there was this kind of early 90s kind of sort of scene of slightly indie kind of bands that had come from there, really. But that had kind of finished by the time I was kind of into being in bands and going to gigs and stuff. So yeah, it didn't feel particularly kind of vibrant. Then my friend lived next door to the guitar player from heavy metal band Diamond Head, who were a big influence on Metallica. But I wasn't really that wasn't really my scene.
Nah, fair enough, yeah. So what year did you get to Sheffield then, out of interest?
So it was 1999. I started in Sheffield.
Ah, okay, so it's
Um,
like on the verge of all that scene kicking off, really.
Yeah, so I started uni in the September, and I can kind of remember very quite vividly actually going to Record Collector, which is like a record shop in Broomhill, which is near where I lived at the time, and they had like the Modern Age by the Strokes that was in the shop, and I was like, oh, that looks quite interesting. Like I'll buy that. Like I kind of that looks quite good, and then sort of taking it back to my kind of halls of residence and like playing it and then like being like going like knocking on people's doors like you gotta come like listen to this, it's amazing. Like so that was, yeah, that was like the first kind of my first year at uni, really, was that kind of the Strokes kind of happened, I guess, at that time.
Yeah, it's pretty ideal, isn't it, to be fair? Did
I
that,
was talking to someone about like that record, like for that probably for a year maybe was like um that's what you had on in the house or in the flat when you were just kind of getting drunk before you went out. Like, and that's like a great record to do that too. Like, it's like the perfect record for being 18 and having like no responsibility and just getting trashed and then just going out and partying. Like, it's great for that. So yeah, that was kind of, yeah, it was kind of a good fortuitous timing, shall we say?
yeah, yeah. And then kind of, I was reading Daniel Dillon's Ray,
Oh yeah,
Daniel Dillon Ray's new
Daniel
book about
Dillon Ray.
Sheffield, and
Yes.
some quotes for you in there from you in there about like how, yeah, basically just didn't play drums before the band, and then I listened back to an interview with Kate and Dorian, and I think Kate said you might have lied about being able to play drums or something. I don't know.
That is true. So I knew Dorian a little bit. Dorian used to work in the library in the university, um, and then I'd see him out at gigs and stuff, and like there was some things that like a few gigs that like not many people are at. So I remember going to see Peaches, and there was like maybe like 10 people there, and some of the other people that were there were like Dorian was one, and Emma and Kate were the other people that were there, and then went to see. There's this kind of I guess like at the time there's this kind of weird bit where I think the Strokes kind of happen, and that's really exciting. But there's like a bit of it around that time. It's kind of pre-Arctic Monkeys as well, so there's this kind of weird thing happening in Sheffield where there's kind of like some stuff going on, but it's not quite as big as Arctic Monkeys is. And there was this tour that was 80s Matchbox, Beeline Disaster, the Parkinsons, and Akira Cult. Which kind of was like really cool. Like we really liked all those bands. So I went to that with my friend Kate, who I used to DJ with, because I used to DJ and do bits and pieces like on the student radio and then like DJing at bars and stuff. And they were there then as well. So you kind of bumped into each other and you were kind of on like nodding terms, and you'd maybe have a chat every now and then, really, but nothing like major. And then I was at Fuzz Club, which was the Sheffield Uni's like indie night, which yeah was kind of a bit stuck in the past, really, in a lot of ways. So it was really noticeable if you were someone that was kind of into that scene, really. Like it still played like Muse and stuff. Like I'm not dancing to Muse, thank you very much. But like yeah, it kind of was you kind of stood out. And then Dorian came over to speak to me, and he was like, oh yeah, like we're starting this band, and we're looking for a drummer, like, and you look like you're a drummer. And at the club it was like 150 for a Jack Daniels and Coke, so I was always just wrecked. I was like, yeah, I can do it, I'll do it, it's fine, yeah, I'll do it. It'll be great, I know exactly what I'm doing. Thinking either he would forget or it would just come to nothing. Like I didn't think it would actually happen. And then like a week later, he kind of collared me in the street and was like, "All right, so yeah, like I've booked a practice, like so it's like at this on this day, so you're gonna come to this practice." And I was like, "Okay, yeah." So I just went and I had one. I turned up with like a bag of cans and one set of drumsticks and just busted it from there. Really,
Well, so you literally had no experience on drums
I'd
up
never
until that
I'd never
point.
sat down. It's like the first time I'd ever sat down behind a drum kit ever.
So what point did you come clean to him?
I think they probably knew quite straight away, really. I don't think it mattered though. I don't think it really. You know, I don't think anyone really cared. We were all just kind of feeling our way through it. Like no one had ever been in a band before. Like no one really knew what they were doing. And I think if I'd like turned up and I had like jazz chops and I was like, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't have worked. Like it worked because you know, we were all a bit shaky around the edges to begin with, and we all kind of grew together to get better at our instruments, really. So, yeah, I don't think it really mattered. Like, yeah, I just went with it, and it was fine. Like, it's just hitting stuff that sticks, isn't it? Like, how hard can it be? Like, that was my general attitude. Was like, yeah,
No, fair enough. I mean, it is a mad story, like the
and I
fact
think
that
I think I
like
were
none of
lying
you
about
played
it.
instruments.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Like we like we'd never done it before. Like none of us knew what we were doing. Like I remember a really early gig. Like, and we were probably a little bit obnoxious at the well, all the way through probably, but certainly at the start, like we were, just I think that was just our sort of shtick really a little bit. But we did this night called Pigs, which is it's in Leeds, and it was a bit like Trash in London. And one of the guys that ran Pigs was the drummer from the Kaiser Chiefs, and we were booked to play at this thing, and like people used to get really like over the top, like dressed up. It was great. And we were sort of sound checking, and Nick, who I didn't necessarily always get on with anyway, kind of came over and was like, "Oh, your drums are out of tune," and I was like, "Oh God, mate, like you can't tune drums." Like I had no clue that you could tune drums. Like I thought he was like taking the piss. Like I was like, "Absolutely, what are you on about?" Like tunings for guitars, and we didn't even bother to tune our guitars. Like, yeah, like we just didn't have a clue really at all.
But it seemed that kind of worked for you, though. Like you say, it kind of gave you a. I don't know. Dorian said it was like you clearly had that kind of, I don't know, that intangible element, kind of like you knew you were on the right path as soon as you started practicing, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think like I think there was something about. Like I think Dorian asked me for a reason ultimately, like for whatever reason. I think I remember like we'd like been DJing. I'd been DJing somewhere. It was the first Yeah's gig in the UK. They played at the National Centre for Popular Music in Sheffield, and I DJ'd afterwards at the after party. And like I played like I think I played like Kylie Minogue, like "Can't Get You Out of My Head," which is a great tune. And like Kate came over and was like, "Oh my god, like this is brilliant! I've never heard anyone play this out. It's fantastic!" Like, and that was like, so I think they kind of knew that I fit into whatever it was that they were kind of into, really. So I guess they spotted that about me. And so then when we were kind of started, all those like little bits of things that we like all just like slotted together, and it just kind of it worked because we wanted the same thing out of it, or we liked the same things. Like it didn't matter to them that I couldn't play anymore, that it mattered to me that they couldn't play. Like, that wasn't what it was about, really. It was never about our you know technical abilities. Musicians was just something that was never really important to us. It was about like writing a good song, I guess, and you can do that without having any musical talent at all, really. Not talent maybe, but certainly musical technical skill, I guess maybe is a better way to phrase it. Like I'm not a very good drummer, and I was never a very good drummer ever. Like even towards the end, after doing it for loads of years, like if you said to me like, "Oh, play the song," it's in like 7/8 time, I wouldn't know what that means. Like I don't know, and I don't care. But like I could play the drums with those four other people in a way that made those songs work, and that for me was the most important thing, really. Like you're just a building block in creating a good song, and I kind of quite like that. I think that's good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we were literally just playing what sounded good. You weren't trying to like take inspiration from anywhere else.
Yeah, I think there's certain sort of other drummers that I really liked. Like I still, I think like Paul Thompson from Franz Ferdinand is a fantastic drummer, and I kind of liked that kind of disco-y kind of thing that he did. But I also like the fact that he said that he had his drum kit really low so that girls could see him. So that was also a thing that I kind of really liked as well. So that was kind of cool. So I quite liked him. Um, I really like the Slits, so I really like that kind of first Slits record, and then I really like the Slits, like the Peel session that they did, and the drumming's just really kind of raw and like kind of almost like glam rock. It's just kind of like really kind of just kind of a bit all over the place, but it just kind of works. And again, there's no real like the Slits are great because there's no kind of concession to kind of technical expertise at all. It's just like they just make this great sound, and it doesn't really matter that she couldn't play the drums like Palmer, or she couldn't play them. It doesn't really matter because it works for those songs, and I guess that was kind of quite a big inspiration. And then there's kind of obvious things like Mo Tucker in the Velvet Underground, and I like girl drummers. So like Lindy Morrison, who's the drummer in the Go Betweens, I really liked her as well. Just really unflashy. Like I'm not interested in kind of big drum rolls and all that kind of I'm never going to be John Bonham. Or is that the drummer from Led Zeppelin? I don't know. Is that what he's called? Um,
Uh, yeah, yeah. It sounds about right, mate. Yeah.
but I'm never going to be that guy. So I might as well just not try, and I'll just do something kind of that's myself, really.
And when it came to the songs, like, did Dorian wrote the songs kind of thing. Did he leave it up to you to decide the drums, or was it like a bit of a democratic thing?
I think it got more democratic as we went along. I think we got to a point, where, you know, through our own little kind of language, we kind of communicate what we wanted it to be a little bit. So he'd maybe say, "Oh, this should sound like this song," or like, "If you heard this record, like maybe try and make the drums sound a little bit like that." And then you just kind of feel it out and kind of work it out a little bit. Or he'd do that thing that I always think is really funny when people who don't know anything about music try and talk about music, and you kind of go, "Yeah, it kind of goes like like not like scatting, but like he just would kind of like you just kind of work it out, and then you just kind of take it from there. And it'd probably be pretty terrible for the first hour, and then over the course of a practice it'd kind of get more refined to the point where it kind of works, really.
And you're playing gigs within 3 months, is that right?
Yeah, so we had a gig booked in Leeds kind of quite early doors, I think. So a friend of ours in Leeds had like a fanzine, and he was putting a night on, so he was like, "Oh, come and play." So we were like, "Right, we've got to get enough songs together to have like a set of to do at this thing." So I think we played for like 20 minutes, which was probably about 10 minutes too long. Um, and we did. Like I think we had probably at that point we had like Long Blonde, like New Idols. We wrote those two quite quickly. We had this song called Marianne, Marianne, which was like quite. That was the first song that we wrote, which is this kind of like surf guitar thing. That was kind of that, and then we did a cover of Del Shannon's "Runaway," and that was like our set. That was it. Like, so yeah, but that was kind of quite early on, really. So yeah, so we just kind of did it. I think we had, because we'd never really been in bands before, and I think because we just had this view that we just get on and do it without really caring about what it would look like. We didn't really feel the need to like spend hours like honing our set or whatever. We just were like, let's just do it. Like, and that kind of stuck with us all the way through kind of everything that we did, really. So we did some like really amazing things. Like we just took ourselves off to New York and went to play in New York for a week, like off our own
Oh,
back.
really?
Yeah, like a friend, kind of someone that we knew had come to London. Well, he come to London and he bought the Angular single, the blue Giddy Stratospheres single, and then he had a little kind of, it's very sort of similar to Angular like setup label in New York, and he was like, oh, I want to kind of repress it and release it in the States, and like, do you want to come and play some gigs in America in New York? And we'd been going for like 18 months or something, and we were just like, yeah, okay. He was just like, you can stay at my friends on their floor, like I'll put you on. You can do like 3 shows in a week, and like if you can get here, I'll just like look after you while you're here, basically. So we all kind of cribbed together our student loans or whatever and got plane tickets, and then just went to New York for a week. And like we weren't signed, like we'd met this guy like once, like we just were like, I don't think, you know, we didn't ever think that we would ever get anywhere, really. So like we weren't like waiting for like a label or a manager. Like you kind of like, no one might ever ask us to go to New York again. So like we might as well just do it while we've got the chance to do it. Like we didn't have this plan of like, this is what it's going to look like. So when someone offered us the opportunity to go to like Mexico or to Dresden or wherever, we were just like, yeah, we'll do it. Why not? Why would you not go to New York to play some gigs in New York? It's cool. So like, yeah, we just did all that stuff without really thinking about it. Like we didn't give it too much thought. We were just like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think I was listening back to the interview I did with Kate and Dorian, and I think Kate mentioned something like a festival he did in Mexico that he couldn't talk about or something. Does that
Yeah, so
ring any bells?
we did this again. It was a bit kind of just random, like getting this offer to do this gig, and we were like, yeah, again, we may never get asked. We're going to go to like Guadalajara in Mexico and do this gig. I'm probably going to get shot now through the window for talking about it. Like, going to take me out. But it was sponsored by Marlboro, the cigarettes, and you kind of you couldn't, like, it was just at the time when advertising for cigarettes had been like banned, so like they couldn't like um kind of talk. We couldn't talk about the fact that we were doing. It was called like Marlboro Fest or something like that, but we couldn't talk about it because it was like promoting cigarettes. And I just remember like being around like in the venue as people, like in the field as people were queuing to get in, and they were like confiscating people's cameras and giving them cigarettes as in exchange for their cameras to just try and like get them in the venue. And like you had like all the cigarettes that you could eat while you were there. Basically, there were just like people just walking around with big trays of fags. It was great.
That's
um
hilarious.
and it was kind of really um kind of dodgy. It wasn't dodgy, it was all like above board, but like so we agreed to do it, and the money was quite good. Like, so, well, obviously it's a cigarette company, they've got loads of cash, but they kind of, they paid us the money, like they transferred us the money to the bank account, and they paid for the flights and the hotels. And then when we got there, this guy like met us off the plane to take us to our hotel, and he just had like a big brown envelope full of cash, and he was like, "Oh, here's your cash." And I was like, "Well, you know, we've been paid." He was like, "No, this is just extra cash." And I was like, "Okay." Like, felt like someone at some point was going to come and like demand this cash back, but they never did. So we just spent all the cash. It was great. It was a really good. It was a really good week away in Mexico.
Sounds like there could be some kind of Netflix documentary or something, the Marlboro Fest.
My professor, yeah, like who else? Hot Heat played. Were there? Soulwax were there. I can't remember who else played actually. But it was quite funny because we got picked up from the airport with the guys from Hot Heat, and we were in this like minibus with the guys from Hot Heat, which is just like a really funny experience. Like, as someone who's, you know, you've been at whatever, you've been at indie clubs like dancing to like bandages or what have you, and then you're in a minibus with this guy like just sat in front of you. Like, this is really, just a very surreal kind of experience.
And the crowds in South America always seem, fairly mad for it. Was that the case there as well?
Yeah, it was a pretty wild. It's a pretty wild gig, and this was so we weren't signed. So I guess it would have been. I don't know, 2005 maybe, but it was just before we got signed, I think. So it was maybe like we, it was maybe around the time that we won the NME Award actually. So maybe it was 2006. So, we're kind of getting a bit slicker and a bit more kind of professional in our approach to maybe playing. But I do remember it being a pretty wild kind of few days, like and because it was like in Guadalajara, which is like it's not Mexico City, so it's kind of a bit of a smaller place. So like I remember the day after, like being in the town, and like loads of people that had been at the festival were like in the town, like kind of speaking to us in the street and stuff. We were just walking around this like beautiful old town in Mexico, and it was like, oh, well, this is great. Like all these people like coming up to us and like, yeah, I saw you last night, and it was like to be in Mexico is an insane thing in and of itself. But to be in Mexico and have people like recognize you on the street is like a mad thing to be happening. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, that's quality. All right, mate. Well, let's dip into the songs you sent across, starting
Okay,
with
cool.
Eraser Ratter. I think the only other person that chose this song was John from Neil's Children. So,
Really, that's it. That's well, I love Neil's Children, and I love John as well. I think John's an absolutely brilliant guy. So that makes me really happy actually that John's the other person that picked it. I will absolutely take that. So going back to those kind of shared influences, like when we kind of started, like me and Dorian would like make each other like tapes of like things that we were kind of listening to, and like the first tapes that we made each other, both of us put this track on the tape as like the first song on the tape. So it was like, oh, this is like a good sign that this is kind of gonna work. Really, that this is going to be a good thing. We've kind of got these kind of shared influences, and then like kind of just after the Strokes, I guess, but before, particularly in Sheffield, before kind of Arctic Monkeys got big. Like I think Arctic Monkeys really like flattened the landscape a little bit in terms of what music was like in Sheffield because everyone just wanted to be like Arctic Monkeys. And like that's not a criticism of Arctic Monkeys, but like before that, I think before that period, not just in Sheffield, but I think in the UK, there was like this real tranche of like quite odd, sort of interesting kind of guitar band type stuff happening. And Neil's Children would definitely be one of those bands, and the kind of Cult, and some of the kind of sort of, and it was really sort of scratchy and out there, and a bit kind of yeah, a bit more maybe kind of left field than what it became really. That's kind of I think been written out of history a little bit. Sort of people have kind of forgotten about that kind of era of stuff really. That I think it's a bit of a shame really. Like I think there was some really odd and unusual kind of guitar music happening around that era, sort of 2001, sort of 2002. That yeah, just has kind of got written out of history a bit. And Eraser Art are one of those bands that kind of for me kind of typify that a little bit.
okay, so well, here they are with Tongue Tied. Yeah, and I mean, in the book, in Daniel's book, there's a lot of talk in Sheffield or about Sheffield, like in terms of, bands that are growing up there versus bands that moved there or whatever. Did you feel that divide at the time?
Um, I think like a little bit like there's maybe a story that like Dorian will have told about when we did that kind of New Yorkshire kind of photo shoot, and maybe we kind of maybe had a little bit of hostility towards from those bands, maybe not so much from Arctic Monkeys, who I always in the interactions that I had with them were always pretty cool, but certainly some of those other bands, I think maybe we were seen as like outsiders a little bit. But I also think we were naturally outsiders anyway. Like we were a bit older than a lot of those guys. They weren't really part of our world really in terms of what we were doing. Guess we were a bit more kind of bit weirder maybe. Like as the our influences are a bit odder maybe in terms of kind of some of those kind of weird sort of synthy bits and stuff. So yeah, I think there was a little bit of that. I think we were always very keen to put ourselves out on a limb as well, though. If I'm honest, like we very much like deliberately painted ourselves as like other from those bands as well, because I think it suited us to stand out almost a little bit, and we probably were a bit obnoxious and a bit kind of antagonistic, and we're quite happy to do that. Really, I think a little bit like we were quite willing to be quite kind of provocative and outspoken and stand out a little bit really. So there was a bit of it, but probably not. It was probably not maybe quite as pronounced as it was always made to be. But I think we definitely felt like outsiders, but by choice as much as anything else. I think.
And in terms of this like band mantra that was on the website about saying you don't listen, the band doesn't listen to the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix, etc.
Yeah.
Were you all subscribed to
Yeah, I think so. I think we would absolutely and still would stand by that, I think. I kind of think like I mean again, I think we were we're very willfully like provocative in that statement.
Yeah, I
But
think
also
Dorian
like
said
with
that he
good
knew that he'd
reason.
get attention or something. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But like also I think like if you're making music in a guitar band, like you don't need to talk about the Beatles. Like let's just work on the basic assumption that you have some engagement with the Beatles. Like forget it. Like I'm not interested. Um I always like to wind people up as well when people ask me if my who my favorite Beatle is because I think Yoko Ono is my favorite Beatle. And I've only been to the Cavern once, but I did wear like a big Yoko Ono t-shirt when I went to the Cavern just to kind of willfully wind people up because I do actually really like Yoko Ono. But I just think it's a really funny thing to do that people are really precious about that stuff. Like, who cares? Like, yeah. But equally, what you're also doing is you're kind of sorting the wheat from the chaff a little bit by doing something like that. Like, you kind of people will either read that and go, "Oh yeah, actually, yeah, this is I'm on side with this," or they'll get really upset. And if you're upset, we're not the band for you, and that's okay. Like, but you're just drawing a really clear line in the sand. Um, and then people kind of know what they're signing up for. Like you can't read that and then come and see us and be upset that we're a shambles. Like we've made it really clear to you that we're not that's not what we're doing. Like we're not about that. It's a very clear statement about who we are and what we're about. And I kind of really like bands that do that. Like a band that's got a very clear kind of sense of identity is always like a good thing. I think whether you like it or not.
No, yeah, it's interesting. Like when I was talking to Jamie Reynolds and Conor McNicholas, I think they said like having some kind of manifesto is like a great starting point. That's what be good advice for any young bands. I think they said. So
Definitely, and
yeah.
we there's like I really liked Dexy's Midnight Runners, and they when they started out, they had like a kind of manifesto. That's kind of one of the things that they had, and it kind of feeds into that kind of a lot of punk bands and post punk bands had those kind of like really big, bold like statements that they would make, like Scritti Politti, and I kind of like all that stuff. Like I think you should be a little bit provocative, and you should be a little bit kind of outspoken and yeah have a really clear sense of like this is what we're about, this is us, like and you like it or you lump it really, and that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that.
And the next song, the aforementioned Ikara Cult. What can you tell
Yeah,
us about this one?
so again like going back to we've kind of already touched on this kind of that tour of there was kind of 80s and Matchbox Beyond Disaster, the Parkinsons, and the Cara Cult. And I feel like everyone that was the Sheffield leg of that gig, that tour was like kind of a big deal at the time. And the Sheffield kind of leg of that gig, I think there was us in the crowd in our kind of all kind of in our like scattered, like probably Pink Grease were there, like who I'm going to talk about in a bit. Kind of the guy from Kings Have Long Arms, Adrian, who's now in like the moon landings and stuff. So it was like everyone that was at that gig ended up being in like a band somehow, like and like everyone remembers 80s Matchbox Beyond Disaster because they were like on the soundtrack to Shaun of the Dead, so they kind of get remembered. And everyone remembers the Parkinsons because the singer always got his cock out, so everyone can kind of remember them. But people kind of have, I think, Akira Cult have kind of gotten forgotten about a little bit. And I thought they were great. Like they sounded like the Fall before the Fall, like in the Fall was cool again. Like they had girls in, which I think is I like that. That's always a good sign for a band. I think it's not like heavily male. It's kind of something a bit sort of interesting about that. They kind of wore like vintage suits on stage. Kind of they had like a really like good style. It was really sort of minimal. Like that first record of theirs is just like a black with like white squares on it, and it's just got this really good sense of like design. It kind of looks like a kind of modernist um, kind of artwork, really. So yeah, they were really great, and I think they've been again a band that have maybe just been written out of history a little bit, but probably deserve a bit more kind of shine for sort of yeah for what they did at the time.
Okay, well here they are. Here's Ikara Cult with Sink Venice. No, it's interesting, like in terms of the influences for songs and stuff. I think Kate described it as like playing a character that kind of Dorian had written. Was it like the same for all the band? Did you feel like you're playing some kind of, I don't know, playing a bit of a character on stage?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a kind of a bit of a sort of performative air to kind of doing it. Like, Screech Loud as a character, like he is like, and you kind of, and it comes back to sort of that kind of, a lot of people said we were style over substance, which I think is really unfair. But that kind of the way that we dressed and the way that we presented ourselves and all of that kind of stuff, like it's a performance, isn't it? When you're going on stage, like it is, you are putting on a show. And some of that was about nerves maybe, but also some of that was just about like we wanted to look cool and we wanted it to be like a show and a performance, and we were all like dressed up and whatever. And I think that's good. Like I remember going to we went to watch the Futureheads, and the Futureheads cancelled. Um, and the guy on the door was like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Like, there's three really competent bands playing tonight." And I was like, "That's the most uninspiring thing I've ever heard. Like, nobody wants to be Britain's most competent band. It's like the most boring thing in the world. Like, I don't want to go and watch. Like, I'm like a head teacher now, and like I need to be competent. Or like if I was having open heart surgery, I'd like the surgeon to be competent. But like a band doesn't need to be competent. Like it can be chaotic and it can be like over the top and it can be, all kind of dressed up, and like that's a good thing, I think. So we were very keen to lean into that kind of performative element of being on stage. So yeah, I think there was definitely an element of that. And like in interviews, like, you know, you're definitely kind of aware of the people listening, I think. So like the statement about listening to the Beatles and all those kind of bits and pieces, you can't help but be aware of how that's going to be received by people, and you're kind of saying things with one eye on maybe how people are going to react a little bit, which I think is no bad thing.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of gigs in recent years where there's been way too much focus on the technical aspect, like something will go wrong and they'll massively draw attention to it. Do you know what I mean? There'll be like a bit of an argument with the sound technician. It's just like, just get on with it. I don't know. I'll get on with it
Yeah, and
best you
like
can.
you go to see gigs in the understanding that it's like stuff will go wrong. Like probably some of the best gigs that I've seen have been where things have kind of gone a bit haywire, and that's really memorable. I went to see I don't know if you know that band Sun. They're like a kind of drone like metal band, and they wear all these like big cloaks and whatever, and they play in loads of dry ice. And they got into a fight on stage, and it was great. Like it was brilliant. Like that's what I want to see. I don't want to just see them like grinding through their back catalog, like dead behind the eyes. Like I think that's really cool. Like I saw Suede and the kind of power went, and like Brett just sang the rest of the song without the band. It was like absolutely brilliant. Like it was just really cool. Like that's what it should be like. Like that's more memorable than just competence. Competence is overrated.
Great quote yeah, for a head teacher.
Yeah, not in my professional life, but
No, no, I mean it's like you see bands at like quite a low level now with like in-ear monitors and stuff. It's like fair enough, but me, I don't know if you're losing something there. I don't know.
Yeah, I would absolutely like. The more expensive the gear on stage, like the worse the band is going to be, as a general rule. I think like our equipment was always like really shonky and bad, but like that's fine. Like yeah, like I you don't all the gear, no idea.
And then yeah, I wanted to ask about. I think Dorian said he moved to London at some point. Like, how did that work? Did you all not go, or how did it go?
So that was kind of we went to London and recorded Couples, the second album. So we that was kind of 2007. So we'd gone to London to do Couples, had a really good time in London and really enjoyed ourselves. And then we kind of went on tour. Um, but Dorian was like, "Oh, I'm going to just stay and live in London, like post recording Couples." And we all had kind of stuff going on kind of elsewhere. So like I just met Anna, who is now my wife, but at the time I just kind of met her. So I was like, she was in Leeds. So I was like, I want to go be back up in Leeds because I want to be close to her. And but I don't think it really mattered in the dynamic of the band because like by that point we were out touring Couples, and then it kind of ended kind of not that long after that really. So it was only like it was quite a sort of late decision really, and I don't think it really, we were on the road so much, it kind of didn't really matter where anyone kind of lived. It was just kind of I don't think it was um, that big a deal really.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Yeah. And then in terms of working with producers, like work with some big name producers, Paul Epworth, Errol Alkan. Like, how did that
Yeah.
influence your drumming? Out of interest, did you work directly with them on it?
So the experience of working with Paul Epworth was an odd experience. We only did that one single with him. Like he came up to Sheffield and just we recorded it over a weekend really. So it wasn't like a particularly big kind of kind of big deal, really. I mean, he was, I don't, his heart didn't seem in it, shall we say. I think it's probably the best way to describe it, with all due respect to him. I think we were just, it was at that point where he was like the big name producer. He'd done like that Block Party record, he'd done like Maximum Park, he'd done Future Heads. Like he was like the go to producer, I think, that everyone just kind of drafted into to kind of to work on a record. And I think it'd be unfair to say that he was dialing it in, but maybe he was just dialing it in a little bit, which is fair dues. Like everyone's got to make a living, haven't they? But actually working with Steve Mackey in terms of my drumming was really kind of influential. Like Steve like really sadly passed away, but I really loved working with Steve. Um, obviously I'd loved Pulp, but I also loved what Steve had done in terms of like getting into music production and coming from a background as someone that hadn't started off as a musician and had like really kind of learned the ropes kind of as he'd gone along really. So whilst I talked earlier about not caring about technical stuff, and I don't. I like the way that Steve approached that was the right way, almost like he'd come from a non-technical background and just learned the bits that he needed. So working with him and he really like pushed me to be a better drummer. I think he was just like, oh, it's a bit sloppy, or it's a bit, you need to tighten it up, or you need to hit the drums harder, or you need to kind of play in a way that is better for the song. And he was very keen when we did Someone's Drive You Home. He was like, I want full like live drum takes. Like, no, we're not cutting it up. We're going to do all the drums, like every single drum track on all of those records is just one take. So he really pushed me to kind of get like a perfect take of all of those songs, and that kind of pressure to kind of perform and play it better was really really impactful on in just making me a better drummer really. So he was probably the biggest in terms of working with producers. He was definitely the biggest kind of influence on making me a better drummer really. I loved working with Errol, and Errol was kind of much more. I think we were much freer with Errol in terms of what we would allow him to do. So, like, in certainly that kind of like experimenting with different sounds and maybe experimenting with different um, recording techniques and synths and all those kind of bits and pieces. But in terms of a drummer and my performance as a drummer, I think working with Steve was really like pushed me to be better as a musician, which was a really good experience.
And did you kind of pick your own producers, or did Rough Trade help with that as well?
I think we had like a list really of people that we wanted to work with. And Rough Trade were very good at just letting us do what we wanted really to some extent. So I think initially when we did the first record, we kind of muted Jarvis as someone to produce the record, and Rough Trade were like, well, Jarvis doesn't really do that. But Steve does. So are you kind of interested in working with Steve? And Steve had produced, so he produced maybe like 4 or 5 songs on that first MIA record, which I really loved that record. And he produced some other bits and pieces as well. So he's kind of bringing something that's not just like a indie producer, like he's bringing maybe something slightly different to the table as well, which is quite nice and quite interesting. So then we kind of went to meet Steve in the pub in Sheffield, kind of to meet him and see what that would look like in terms of that dynamic. And we just clicked really, it just worked really well. And again, that's like quite a strange experience to be someone who as a 14-year-old is like in his house with his mum and dad like watching Pulp on Top of the Pops and being like, oh my god, like Pulp amazing. And then like what 10 years later the guy's like buying you a pint in like the pub is quite a surreal thing really. So yeah, they were kind of pretty willing to let us work with Steve, and they just kind of let us get on with it really. And then when we were doing Someone's Drive You Home, we'd done a few B-sides with Errol because we wanted to do some B-sides and we wanted them to sound different to the songs on the album. And Errol had been DJing at Trash, and we'd known Errol for years, kind of just through kind of he's playing the records at Trash and was really supportive of us. And we were chatting to him and he was like, oh, I want to maybe get into production. I don't want to just be a DJ like all my life. And we were like, oh, well, that's interesting because we want to do some songs with someone different to Steve. and Rough Trade just like, yeah, give it a go, see how it goes. And again, that relationship just worked really well. We kind of had similar ideas about what we wanted out of records and similar influences. And yeah, they were just kind of very willing to just let us get on with it, really.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, what you just said there reminded me of something else Dorian said about Paul Epworth, saying he was maybe more, he was quite keen on you taking him to like an old man's pub or something. Is that right?
So he really wanted to go to where we used to record and where the studio was. Um, at the end of the road was a pub called the Cricketers, which was like it's near Bramall Lane, where Sheffield United play, and it's kind of got like a reputation as like a pretty hard there's this kind of Sheffield United firm called like the BBC. Blades Business Crew is what it stands for, and like the Cricketers was like their pub, like that's where they all used to go and like drink before the match and stuff. It's got a bit of a rep as being pretty shady, really. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I want to go for. Let's go there." So we sort of took him there for some pints, like after we'd been recording. So yeah, so that's quite weird. And he kind of he we recorded over the weekend, and he came to our house. Like he was staying in this really nice hotel in Sheffield. But on the Thursday night, he just came round to mine and Dorian's house and just sat in our living room with like a big bag of cans of Stella. And we were just listening to the first Dexys Midnight Runners album, just drinking loads of Stella, just to kind of get ourselves in the mood for recording, which is again quite a strange experience. Like we lived in this really like grotty house in Sheffield, and Paul Epworth's just there with getting some cans of Stella from the spa and just yeah, chatting to us about Dexys. It was kind of weird.
And like I've been talking recently about it again, but it was like a huge era for demos as well, and it will have been for you guys. Like, where did you record them?
So we did like all the demos. We recorded various demos with a few people. I guess the kind of Alan Smythe ones that we did are the ones that kind of people kind of maybe remember. Like they were the ones that kind of went on our MySpace page and stuff. MySpace, there's a thing that we kind of forget about. Um, but so yeah, and obviously Alan has kind of got that rep for doing those Arctic Monkeys demos as well, which was really good. So like we went and did some work with Alan, and that was really cool. Like I really enjoyed working with Alan. Again, we kind of shared a similar attitude, um, and he was kind of again very willing to let us kind of experiment and do whatever. And it was kind of cheap and cheerful, like in the nicest possible way. Like two flyers, literally just two rooms, like the sort of room that you kind of record in and the room that you sit in. But we did like some good stuff with him. So we recorded Christmas is Cancelled with him as well. And I really like that song. I think it sounds great. Like it sounds like a proper Phil Spector, like 50s, 60s, like Christmas song with like sleigh bells on it and everything. And Alan made it sound like that. Like he just kind of got what we were about. I think like because we weren't very technically proficient, like I think sometimes you kind of go into those environments with like people that are sort of musically kind of a bit more kind of professional than you are, and they kind of made you feel a little bit like you didn't know what we were doing. So when we went to record Giddy Stratospheres, the guy that recorded Giddy Stratospheres, like the Angular version, he we did like a few takes, and he said to me over the monitors when everyone was finished playing, I think it would be better if we record it with a drum machine instead, which is like pretty harsh for me to hear. But I did say to Dorian once that song going to get written on my tombstone when I die. I think it would be better if we did it with a drum machine instead. Um, but like Alan wasn't like that. He kind of understood our like quirks and our kind of he was totally happy to just mic up a stylophone and just play a stylophone, which was good. And going back to Pulp as well. So one of the things that we did when we recorded with Alan, and because Alan had done some recording with Pulp in the early '90s and kind of knew Pulp a little bit, and we really wanted Russell Senior to come and play, like who played like the violin and stuff in Pulp. So we said to Alan, "Oh, Russell's coming down later on." And Alan was just like put his head in his hands, and he was like, "Russell is going to be here for like hours, just like he's just going to bring like he'll bring like all kinds of nonsense and he'll just want to add like all kinds of shit to your record. It'll sound terrible, but okay, fine, let's just go with it." So Russell turns up in his mini metro, like a bit like Alan Partridge, like, and he gets out his car and he has to put his crook lock on his car. And he bought us one beer each. We bought a little bag with 5 beers in, one for each of us. And then he went in the thing and played his violin, and it was terrible. Like it was really bad. And we use about 3 seconds of this violin on the song. Like that's the only like usable bit. But I can just remember us all just being sat in the control room while he was playing, like just tears of laughter like streaming down our face because it was awful, but also it's like that's Russell Senior in there just doing that. Like it was just so funny, and Alan was just couldn't keep a straight face. It was like a really good little shared moment. It was good.
Yeah, I saw like a BBC News feature about Alan Smythe the other day. I think it was around 20 years of the Arctic Monkeys' first album. But yeah, it showed like the Two Fly Studios. I think it's still going uh, as a recording studio. But it'd be great to get him
Okay,
on
is
at
it?
some point. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and like he was in so he was in a band called Sea Fruit with Jeff, who's the Arctic Monkeys manager. So they were in a band together in the kind of late '90s, kind of post Britpop, I guess. They kind of put out a few singles and stuff. So he kind of had some good stories about being in a band, and he recorded a lot of good stuff. Like there's that label, like the Sheffield Phonographic Corporation, that put out like our very first single, and they put out loads of good like records from loads of Sheffield bands like Monkey Swallows the Universe and all these other bands, and he recorded all that kind of stuff. He was like the kind of go-to guy in Sheffield to kind of record stuff really. So yeah, he's great. He's a great dude.
So then like, going back into the songs, again, the aforementioned Pink Grease. Why this particular song?
So like Pink Grease, I think probably for me are like my favorite band in Sheffield at that time. Like they were the only really great, interesting Sheffield band when we first formed. Like they were absolutely terrifying as a group of people. Like just just like all over the place. Like they just were like a very very like scary, intimidating bunch of people. Like they looked like they would like just beat you up. Basically, they were just like kind of just they built their own instruments and like they kind of just looked a bit bedraggled and all over the place and they were kind of pretty wild. I'm just conscious my battery on my laptop is about to go, so I might just move. Is that all right?
Yeah, of course, mate. Yeah,
And then I'll start talking about it. And again, is that okay?
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Um, I did charge it up, but it's obviously a bit shit.
That's all good, mate.
Okay. Uh, So yeah, so they were Pink Grease were just like terrifying, like this really scary bunch of people. Like they were just quite intimidating. And they were pretty kind of wild. Like so, they had a guy that played like a synthesizer that he'd built himself, and he played it with like a toothbrush, like a big stylophone. And they were just really kind of you never saw them in the daylight. They were only ever out at night. Like they were just this kind of really kind of they looked like something out of like Threads, that sort of post-nuclear apocalyptic film that's set in Sheffield. Like they're just a really odd and scary kind of bunch of people, but they sounded like Roxy Music and they were great. And I just really loved them. Like, and again, I think that there's maybe like a narrative of like music in Sheffield that is like it's pulp, and then there's like nothing, and then there's like the Arctic Monkeys, and then but in that zone between those two things, there's just loads of really cool stuff happening. And Pink Grease, like one of the things that I just think was is great. And then the guy that plays the synthesizer in Pink Grease, he lives in Hebden Bridge, which is not far from me now. And I've always been a bit too scared to go and talk to him because they were like terrifying. And then I was over there a couple of years ago now, and I was fairly inebriated, and he was in the pub, in the same pub as me. So I was like, right, I'm just going to go talk to him. I'm just going to do it. So I went over and I was like, oh, you're in Pink Grease, and like I love Pink Grease, and got chatting to him. And as I was talking to him, I realized that he had a massive rabbit in his hands, like at like kind of 11 o'clock at night, just with this huge rabbit just in the pub. And I was like, that's really reassuring that he's still just like a pretty kind of off the wall, kind of slightly odd guy, even all that after all this time. So yeah, I think they're amazing.
Okay, say they are with the Nasty Show. Yeah, I think Gordon Raphael lives in Hebden Bridge now. It's a bit of a
He does live in Hebden Bridge now.
yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So I did an interview. I've done an interview for another book about kind of the indie scene at this time, and the woman that's written it, she lives in Hebden Bridge. So she came over to interview me, and she was like, "Oh, yeah, he lives there as well." So which is I've never seen him, but like, yeah, it's like the kind of it's like hipster kind of hangout in the north. So yeah,
Yeah, is that the World Was a Mess one? The book.
yeah, that's the one. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think it's coming out. Ooh. Yeah, I think it's coming out in September or something, and that should be
something like that.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because was she like a PR for bands or something?
Yeah, she did Block Parties PR. Um, so yeah, but then like we have like mutual friends, and I bumped into him, and he was like, "Oh, this woman that we know, she's doing this book. I'm sure she'd love to speak to you." So I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." So yeah, I'm becoming like a sort of talking head. Like I'm just doing all them, like Stu McConey. I'm just doing all the stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've been approached about doing a film, so I'll
Okay.
producing the films have to drag you into that as well if you fancy it.
Yeah, I'll do that. Can you get Seth Rogen to play me in the film?
A biopic would be good, wouldn't it? Yeah. Okay, and then yeah, obviously got to mention the NME Awards. You mentioned Jarvis Cocker, and like, there's a thing in NME about him, kind of being the face of this New Yorkshire thing at one point, or kind of holding it together at the NME Awards. Was that the case, or how did it work?
So that night is still one of the most like strange and surreal kind of nights of my life, probably. Like it was, it was kind of a wild experience, and like we just kind of we didn't know really what we were getting in for, really. Like we didn't know that we'd won the award. Like no one had told us. Like we didn't, like, because we didn't have a manager. Like we didn't have, like, we weren't signed. Like we had no clue basically that we'd won this award. Um, and no one had really told us anything about the night. So we were just like, "Oh, I've been invited to the NME Awards. This is amazing. This is like brilliant." So we kind of like bungled into the mega bus, like went down to Sheffield, went down to London, like got in, got kind of dolled up in this like really terrible kind of hotel that we were staying at. Kind of turn up, and it's like you're on the red carpet, like Teddy Sheringham's over there, like whatever. And then we just kind of get bungled into this room, and it's like, we're going to do this photo shoot. It's going to be New Yorkshire, and like Kaiser Chiefs are there, and we knew Kaiser Chiefs a little bit. Look, Jarvis Cocker's here, and it was just this really sort of like chaotic, really sort of surreal kind of experience. And that was kind of maybe the first time that I'd met Jarvis. Probably I'd maybe seen him in Sheffield, or like round and about bits and pieces. But yeah, he was just like someone who is a huge influence on me as I was when I was a kid, growing up. And so just to have that kind of connection with him, and him to be just talking to us about, being in a band and being from Sheffield. And we kind of, then through Steve kind of linking in with him a little bit more and stuff, was just like a really kind of good experience. He's just a good dude. Like he's just a good figure to have around, really. So yeah, so it's just a very odd night. Like yeah, just wild. Sat with Sugar Babes, like sort of they were like on the next table to us, which was very exciting for me. Um, Kind of going to, yeah, sort of, and Ian Brown's just over there. Yeah, it's a good night.
Wasn't Damon Albarn on your table or something?
That's the year after Damon Albarn was on my show,
Right, okay.
and that's a then the year after we were sat with Damon Albarn, and we thought like we didn't even think he'd come. We were like, he won't be there. Like, why is he going to bother? But he was really sound, and so he came and sat with us, and he was kind of getting drunk. And but Kaiser Chiefs were playing live at one point, and obviously they're quite influenced by Blur. And whilst they were playing, Damon just turned around to us and just did the absolute best like eye roll I've ever seen. In like The Traitors, when Tom Daly did that eye roll with whoever it was just like that. He just pulled such a disgusted face, and like we just thought, this is hilarious. Like we sat with Damon Albarn while he's slagging off the Kaiser Chiefs. This is great. what a great night.
All right, then we'll go into the next song. Bit of a gear change, if you like, with Britney Spears and Pharrell. Why this particular song?
Yeah. So I one of the things that I think, um, going back to like that bit around how the band first met and stuff, I hate the indie disco. Like I think it's an awful thing. Like I don't want to dance to Muse, like I said earlier, or whatever. Like if I'm going to like out, I want to be dancing to like fun, kind of good stuff. And like when I was growing up, like you, if I wanted to go out, like with my friends in the town where I lived, like I had to just go to like whatever night was on. Like you just go to, like, there was like you grow up in a small town, like the nightclub's called like Eclipse or like Millennium or whatever, and you just go and drink a Bacardi Breezer, and it's great. So I never really kind of got that weird snobbishness about like, oh, this is kind of cool, like indie music, and this is like pop. It was all the same to me. Like I just like the idea of just like mixing it all together. And I love those kind of like Neptune's productions. I think they're just amazing sounding records. So when I was like DJing out in Sheffield, like when I first kind of started DJing, I just play stuff like this at indie clubs, and people would like absolutely hate me for it, but I really enjoyed doing it. So actually like the night I kind of met my wife, I was DJing, and she'd come, and someone threw a shoe at me while I was DJing, because they were so upset. that I was playing. I can't remember what I was playing, but it would have been something like this. It would have been something like Britney Spears or whatever. But to me, it's just great. It's great. It's just really good. Like it's loads better than Block Party. Like I just think it's just more. It sounds better. It's just yeah. It's a better pop song.
All right, well, here it is. Here's Britney Spears and Pharrell Williams with Boys. Then the next song, yeah, I think the NME journalists at the time rated it, well, quite a lot of them rated it the best song of 2005, I think, Amory. Would you concur with that?
I would absolutely concur with that. I think it's fantastic. And going back to that bit around like drum, like being a drummer, like I'm kind of not interested in being a drummer, but like the drums on this sound like insane. Like it's just like it just sounds so good. Like again, it's kind of really exciting to listen to, really. And I don't like that sort of snobbishness around like, you know, um and it's a bit gendered as well. I think maybe like men with guitars kind of being very dismissive of kind of pop music. Really, it kind of really sits wrong with me. Like that stuff is great, and both of these songs I kind of pick them for the same reason. Really, like for me, this was like just as exciting as The Strokes was, or I don't know, like whatever else it was that was happening at the time. Like kind of Electroclash or whatever. Like it's just really exciting, like good music, and I hate that kind of false distinction, really.
Yeah, well, let's play the song then. Here's Amory with One Thing. And then halfway through the song, so we'll go to the questions that we got in. We'll start with one that we can cut out if you want, but I read it out from Dorian. He says, how many pills did you take backstage at Leeds 2006?
Um, I'm gonna say three. I can't remember if I'm honest with you.
No, fair enough. You're right without staying in there. It's up to you.
That's absolutely fine for. I'm absolutely fine for that to stay in. I actually think so. A funny story about that is that I actually think that Emma got hold of the pills, and I actually think she got them off my wife, but I didn't know it was her at the time. So she was just a friend of Emma's, and I think that's where the pills came from. Um, so she's responsible.
Was that the first time you played it as well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a really funny day actually. Because later on in the night, I ended up getting on stage with Franz Ferdinand. It was when they did that thing where they had loads of drummers on the stage with them, like at the end of the set. And I got on the stage, was drumming with Franz Ferdinand. But I was pretty far gone by that point, and I just can remember like really vividly being on the main stage and it being really overwhelming. And Paul from Franz Ferdinand just laughing at me because I was just like completely all over the place. It was great.
Yes. Yeah, that was a great year, that one. Might be my favourite Leeds festival, I think.
It was a good year. Who else? Was Franz Ferdinand played? Can't remember who else played that year. 2006. Okay, I can't remember.
Ah, it's just a mad lineup, yeah. Like the
Yeah,
Rakes, Good Shoes, who we'll get
good
to
shoes.
soon, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because the year after, when we played on the main stage, Razorlight headlined, um, and I just remember kind of later on in the evening, Jamie Reynolds from Claxons kind of deciding that he was going to go and tell Johnny Borrell exactly what it was that he was doing wrong. So he just kind of went off to go and tell him. And then about 5 minutes later, we just saw him getting like carried out by security. Like he had like someone had his legs and someone had his arms, and they were just like carrying him out of like Johnny Borrell's like little enclave, which was good.
Charlie 0887 says, are you more proud of the NME Philip Hall Radar Award or achieving a good Ofsted?
I'm probably more proud of achieving a good Ofsted, if I'm honest with you, because I that my job means a lot to me, and this school that I work is really important. And I'm really proud to do my job, and I love being a head teacher, and like knowing that you're providing a good education for kids that really need it is a fantastic thing. So that's like probably, yeah, I'm definitely more proud of that.
Fair enough, yeah. And how quickly did you get into that after the band then?
So I fairly quickly actually like working in school. So I kind of the band kind of ended, and I was having like my wife was pregnant, so I kind of needed to sort my shit out really and kind of get a job. So I kind of applied to just work in a school like in the office. Not really knowing what I wanted to do. Like I hadn't got a clue. I always think it's really funny. Like my first application for a job, like I had to put Jeff Travis from Rough Trade down as like a reference, which I just think is a really hilarious thing. Like I guarantee that frankly, Mr. Shankly did not complete that reference. Like he definitely didn't fill it in. So, and I kind of subsequently found out that when I went for the job, I was like the least qualified person on the interview day. But the person that was interviewing me, who was the deputy head at the school, was just like, "Yeah, I just really liked you. You just had like something about you." So we were like, "We'll give you the job, even though you've got no kind of experience at all, because we just, there's just something that we quite like." So I kind of did that, and then I from there kind of said, oh, "I'd like to train to be a teacher, train to be a teacher." And then yeah, just I've done it for like 15 years now. So just kind of worked my way up from teaching up to assistant head and now head teacher.
Yes. And do you like dip back into the music ever, or you just kind of left it behind, or what?
I've pretty much left it behind, really, if I'm honest. Like the last time I played drums was there's two kids in year 11 who are like the only two like punk kids in school, and they for their GCSE music project they needed to do a performance, but there's no one else. They didn't know anyone that played drums, so I said I'd play drums for them, and we did like a banging cover of Zero by the Smashing Pumpkins. So that was like the last time that I played music in front of people. That's pretty cool. But outside of that, like I haven't got the time. Like I work a lot. Like my job's really important to me, and like I've got family, and like I kind of being a dad is really important. And those two things are the things that I invest most of my energy in.
Yeah, yeah. Is it a senior school?
Yeah,
So you must get the odd kid like that knows the music or ask you about it, maybe. I don't know.
not as much like anymore. Like these two guys that I did the drums for, like the guy Alan, he knows, and he like had the CD and he bought it in, and I signed it for him. And I think the kids like they'll ask about it, like they know, and they'll be like, "Oh, are you in a band?" And like, but they don't really know what that means. I don't think so. Most of them kind of find it hard to. They think that I'm just a millionaire because I was in a band once, basically. So they're like, why do you work in a school? Surely you've got millions of pounds. Like, no, that's not quite how it works. Like when I first started working in schools, like my first job, like it's just in the office, and I don't think the band had like officially split up at that point. So like I got the job, and we maybe officially split up like maybe like a month after. But then like some of the kids in the sixth form were like came to see me like on my like second day, and were like, "Oh, because you're working here, does that mean like the Long Blondes are split up? Like because you've got a job now?" And I was like, "Oh no, like I just need a bit of money and whatever." So, but over time, I guess like people don't and like the kids at school, like it's not their world really. Like they don't it's not their thing. They're not really bothered.
No, fair
Other
enough.
than
Yeah.
like in the abstracts, like I was in a band, like that's kind of, but to them being in a band is like being an X Factor. Like they think that's what it is. Like they don't really understand what it means to go and play in Stoke on a Tuesday night to 15 people for against the in a kind of strongbow or whatever. It's just not part of their world really.
What about your own kids as well? Are they old enough to like listen to it or anything?
Yeah, like my own kids. So my kids are like 17 and 13 and 7. So my 13-year-old was like well excited that I was doing this. She was like, "Oh, is that 22 gram pod? Like I follow them on TikTok and on Instagram, and like I'm gonna repost it when it comes up." So she's kind of like a bit more kind of into it. Like my son is into it as well, but she's kind of the one that thinks it's really funny. Like yeah, she's kind of always asking me about it. She's quite interested. She kind of likes music a bit more maybe than my son does. So she's kind of started going to gigs and stuff. So is a bit more kind of interested in what that looks like. So she loves Benson Boone. I don't know who that is, but he's great apparently. But we just through connections, like we know Benson Boone's tour manager because like I know him from kind of band days. So we managed to like get her on the guest list to go and see him. So she's like, "Oh my god, like I'm on the guest list for like Benson Boone," and she's really excited about going to see Benson Boone, which is like really cool. Like I think that's good.
Yeah, yeah. I think she might have commented on the video, from the NME Awards that I posted.
She probably will have done, yeah. Is it about me
Yeah,
being really loud?
yeah. Possibly. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. She was quite excited. I'm surprised she's not like burst in. Actually, I'm like half expecting her to just come in and just like try and get involved at some point. So we'll see.
And then, yeah, I guess like in terms of the end of the band, was that? I mean, obviously it'd been a shock to everyone, kind of the circumstances. But were you quite philosophical about it? Were you kind of able to move on quite quickly? I don't know.
I think like obviously when it happened, it was really tough. Like when I was talking to Dylan Ray about it, actually, like in hindsight, like we just weren't emotionally equipped to kind of deal with that really. Like you kind of think about all the things that are happening. Like I'm like 25, like 26 at this point. So like I'm I'm kind of not, the most emotionally mature person myself really at that point. Like and you're dealing with like your, one of your closest friends, like, nearly dying, like he nearly died. Like I think like we downplayed it a bit at the time, but like, I remember like Dorian's mom phoning me and being like, "Oh, just so you know, like the nurses have said he like might not make it through the night." Like, it was like, so you kind of had that kind of going on. So that's really like stressful, like difficult thing to have to deal with. And then like you kind of process all that, and then you kind of realize actually like that's gonna happen, but now like my kind of livelihood is gone as well. Like I have to completely kind of rethink what I'm gonna do with my life a little bit. So I guess that was kind of tough in the moment. I kind of like my wife's pregnant at that point as well, so I've kind of got like a baby coming. But equally, I think like that kind of just made me um kind of just move past it and think like I have to move on. Like you kind of there's no one's gonna help me out here. Like no one's like you know with all due respect, like Rough Trade are offering me a solo deal. Do you know what I mean? Like no one wants to hear my solo album. It will be terrible. So like you've just got to get on with it. And actually, like I love the fact that I got to do it, but I really kind of love the fact that I've kind of got my life now. Like one of my deputies at school kind of says, like, it blows my mind that you kind of did this and then you were in a band but I can't have one without the other. And I like the fact that that's kind of how my life is. Like there's almost like it's always like my second go round. Like I did that, and it was like, if you'd have told me at 14 that I'd got to do that, it's like my absolute dream, and it was amazing. And I really kind of love the fact that I got to do it, but the fact that I got to do it means that I enjoy the fact that I don't have to do it now, and I enjoy the fact that I love my job. I'm like really passionate about it. Like I really care about what I do. I love being a dad. I love kind of being with a family, and I love all that stuff. I think it's wonderful, and like I appreciate it because I've done that as well. So I'm fairly kind of pragmatic about it.
Yeah, and I guess you didn't have to go through that whole thing of, where the music starts getting sucked out of the music industry and have to navigate it differently. Not saying you wouldn't have done well, but I don't know, it's a bit of a different
It's a different
landscape, if
world,
you
yeah.
like.
It
Yeah.
is a little bit like, and I think we were quite lucky, really. Like, I guess like there wasn't loads of money sloshing around, but I think we probably just kind of got caught it at the point where, like, we could just quit our jobs and we didn't have to really worry about kind of juggling bits and pieces around. Like, we didn't have to think of creating short form content for TikTok or whatever. Like, that wasn't a thing that we really had to worry about. Like, so I guess timing wise, it was quite fortunate really. So like I think and I think to be part of that scene and part of that whole world is good. Like again, it's kind of quite it was quite an exciting time really, and it's amazing that people still want to talk about it. Like you kind of have all that, I don't know, like indie sleaze and all that kind of this, and like it's cool that people are kind of you know like wanting to have conversations about it really. So I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, and like, didn't you have kind of situation where he became one of the like the most coveted unsigned bands in the country, basically? You had every record label trying to sign you.
Yeah, that was kind of like I think that was kind of just after we won the NME Award. That kind of window was kind of really exciting. Like you had like people like coming up to Sheffield, like we got a lot of free dinners. It was great. Like we kind of just try and get as much out of those people as we possibly could, thinking of like the most expensive kind of restaurants we could get them to take us to. Yeah, but you just had lots of people come in and kind of offering us money or like freedom or like food or whatever to sign, and that was really good. But I think we were also very clear about what we wanted. So you know, Rough Trade was always like a label that like had meant a lot to us. Like you kind of I love a lot of those bands. After the Strokes were on Rough Trade, like they're a label that's got that reputation as being like this fantastic kind of independent label. So I think once they kind of started to show a bit of interest, it was really clear to us that that's who we were going to go with. And like Ollie, who does White Heat, who did White Heat, the club, like he worked for Rough Trade at the time, so he was like our A&R guy, and like I love Ollie, he's great, and like we really trusted him, so it was like a really kind of fruitful kind of relationship. But going back to when Dorian had his stroke, so kind of one of the things that sort of sort of kind of precipitated us kind of splitting up was that kind of as a result of the fact that we couldn't do anything, like Rough Trade like dropped us kind of, so like we kind of got a letter saying that we're not going to kind of take up the third album. So I kind of jokingly said like we're the best unsigned band in the country again, like but you're only the best unsigned band in the country like twice, aren't you? Once on the way up and once on the way down. So it it was kind of a weird kind of thing to kind of suddenly find ourselves like unsigned again when we were kind of splitting up. But yeah, but it was cool and it was nice to feel, that was quite exciting that people were sort of talking about us in that way. I'd rather be the best unsigned band than the most competent band anyway. So
No, yeah, definitely. All right, mate. Well, let's go back into the songs then. And a band that or an artist I've not heard before, is it Bricolage or Bricolage? I don't know.
Bricolage. Yeah, so Bricolage are a band from Glasgow, and the drummer from Bricolage is a guy called Andy Brown, who was like a bit of a Leeds scene kind of guy. Who, when we played that gig with Franz Ferdinand at the Brood now, like we supported Franz Ferdinand, they did like a secret gig, and it was like a really big kind of. That was like our first like really big like gig where it was like really sort of there was loads of people there. So he kind of put that on. So there's a little bit of a nod to Andy Brown, who was like a big influence on us in terms of like kind of putting us in touch with the guys from Franz Ferdinand, who like they were a real great help to us, really. But the reason that I've picked this song actually is because one of the things that I really loved about that sort of scene at the time is like um there'd be bands that would just put out like one single and it would be like your favorite single for like 2 weeks and then you just forget about it. And I really like that. Like I think there's lots of kind of pressure to be like, remembered forever for like making like great albums and whatever. And like actually sometimes just making one really good single and then putting a one really good single out is a good thing. Like some bands don't even do that. And like I'm not bothered about being like the greatest, making the greatest album of all time. Like I'm not interested. But like someone will have heard this song at a club at some point, and it will have been like the first time that they kissed a girl or the first time that they like, danced with someone or whatever. And that's like a really amazing thing. Like we put too much stock in like longevity sometimes, but actually being the soundtrack to someone's first kiss is loads more meaningful than, you know, getting 10 out of 10 on Pitchfork or whatever. I really love that. And this kind of song kind of reminds me of that. Like I don't know anything else that they ever did, but this single's pretty cool. And it was like good for 2 weeks and that's enough sometimes, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well here it is. Here's Bricolage with Footsteps. Yeah, and then I'm all right in thinking you got 9 out of 10 for the first album with NME. It's not
We
bad, is
did
it?
get 9 out of 10, yeah, we did. Despite what I said earlier, can I shock you? I like being getting 9 out of 10 in the enemy, despite what I said earlier. Yeah, we did get 9 out of 10, which was kind of mad, really. I think it was the sixth best album of the year that year. Not that I care, but the only reason I know is because I was talking to someone about it recently. But yeah, so that's like an amazing thing. Like again, to kind of as someone who read at that time and from sort of my teens really like read NME like religiously like every single week. Like I remember I remember when I was like 15 going on holiday with my parents to France and making my girlfriend at the time buy the NME for me while I was on holiday so that I could read it when I got back, which is really lame. But like, yeah, so as someone who really kind of loved the NME and had read the NME like religiously for ages, to kind of have that support from them was just like really exciting. Like to be in it and just be like getting a good reviews and you know, yeah, it was a good thing.
Yeah, I think Dorian said you kind of knew it was coming because of all the positive coverage you'd had from NME up until that point or something.
Yeah, like they were really like I think certainly that first, all the singles had been like single of the week. So I think like Giddy Stratospheres was single of the week, Once and Never Again was single of the week. Maybe Weekend Without Makeup was single of the week as well. Like we've got the tour, it got good reviews. So I think we knew that it was going to be, and I think the Arctic Monkeys got 9 out of 10 as well, or had they got, I can't remember. So the Arctic Monkeys album came out at the start of the year. So there's definitely that kind of like narrative of like Sheffield's like the place kind of the place to be. Like like we're kind of really going to big up like these bands from Sheffield as like kind of the kind of the big bands that are kind of around. So I think yeah, we knew that it was going to be like a positive review. So yeah, but I think like yeah, it was, and the review was really good as well. I think I remember from reading it like thinking actually the things that they've talked about are the things that I like about what we do. Like, so that's quite nice. I think it wasn't just the score; it was like the review kind of got what we were about, which I think is is a nice thing as well. It wasn't just like a number. It was like actually you've really communicated what we're trying to achieve here. So great.
Yeah, and like what Dory and Kate were saying was quite interesting. Like usually, like the pressure would increase when it came to the second album, but they said like the pressure was almost relieved a bit or came off a bit because you're kind of going from a 9 out of 10. Like you kind of need to do something different anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, a little bit. And I think going back to being that best unsigned band thing as well. So I think like, we'd been doing like the build up to that kind of first record was maybe like 18 months of like stuff, like kind of putting the singles out on Angular, kind of getting bigger and bigger, like touring. Like we, in that period of time, we'd like supported Maximo Park, we'd like supported Franz Ferdinand, we'd supported like Kaiser Chiefs, we'd like, so there was this real sense of like, we're the best unsigned band in Britain. We've kind of been signed. We've kind of got to deliver this record now that kind of backs up the hype a little bit, I think. So I think there was probably felt like more pressure doing the first album than the second album because I think we just knew that like there was a lot of stakes around it really like there's a bit of almost like justifying art why we're there a little bit and I think there's a little bit of you know people were a bit some people when they were critical were a bit kind of style over substance and all those kind of bits and pieces and you kind of almost want to prove those people wrong a little bit and actually show that we've got the kind of the steel and the substance to make a really strong like first record. So I think that maybe was just a bit more pressure doing someone's drive you home, and then when it came to couples, like I think we just were a bit like actually that's off our backs now. We can kind of afford to like maybe just experiment a bit more. I think we're a bit more confident maybe. So you just lose a bit of that kind of it's not as intimidating to go into a recording studio and do some of those bits and pieces. So you're a bit freer to kind of try new things and experiment a little bit in ways that kind of you wouldn't have done with the first record, really. So yeah, it probably did feel a bit more relaxed.
And if we've not covered it, like what was the catalyst to becoming like the best unsigned band in Britain? Was it like, I don't know, some coverage that kind of
I
cemented that?
think
I
we
don't know.
just kind of, I think we just, I think we were quite savvy in a lot of ways in that, like because we knew what we were about. We'd kind of like, you know, we sent demos to the right people, and we kind of like, you know, we kind of connected with the right people that kind of promoted us in the right way. But what I also think that we kind of did that maybe doesn't happen as much anymore. And maybe it does. Don't know. Like I'm not really part of that world anymore. But we'd gone out and like we worked really hard. Like we toured loads even before we were signed. Like I think so we built up this kind of big fan base before we even kind of got to the point where we'd signed a record deal. Like, and you had like MySpace and stuff that was kind of spreading that a little bit as well. But like, so there was just this huge kind of wave of momentum. Like, we were selling out. Like, we'd go and play like Camden Barfly, and there'd be like queues down the street to come and see us. Or we'd go to like play at these venues in London, and people would be like going like nuts. Like, I remember playing at like White Heat, and like people like couldn't get in, like because there was just like so many people that wanted to come and see us because like we just saw I guess maybe it's a bit old school kind of indie kind of approach to kind of building a fan base where we're not just being pushed on Radio One or we're not just kind of like whatever. We're actually going to like joking aside, like you go to Stoke on a Wednesday to play a gig, and you go to Stoke once and play, and there's 10 people there, and then you go the next time and there's like 75 people there, and then you go like another time and there's like 300 people there, and we just did that loads. We were just going to go in like playing because we saw that as like that's how an indie band operates. Like you do it, you build up your fan base through going and meeting people and going and touring and going and playing in front of people. So I think there was this big kind of swell of support for us that kind of worked in our favor a little bit. Like we're putting out like limited edition singles and they're selling out in like 45 minutes at Rough Trade shop because like so many people want the single. So I think that wave of momentum had just really kind of built behind us, really. So then we kind of just became really hard to ignore, I think, because like you're playing good gigs, people are there to watch you. Like people are coming like dressed as us, like they're dressing like us at the gigs. And if you're a journalist going to review that gig, you're like, oh my god, like there's kind of something kind of happening here. So yeah, we built like momentum from the ground up, and like I'm not suggesting we were like Black Flag or anything, but like we did it ourselves. That we didn't have a press person. Like we did a little bit towards the kind of just before we got signed, but we did it through just working hard to kind of get out there and play for people and meet people. Like going back to that thing around going to New York or Mexico. If someone offered us a gig in I don't know, Southend, we'd go, like, we'd just go and do it. Or if they offered us a gig in Newcastle, we'd just go and do it because, like, that's what we were doing. We were a band, and you're a band, you go out and play.
Yeah, I think Kate said maybe one thing she would change is getting a good manager on board. Was that a bit of a problem at the time? I don't know.
Maybe a little bit, particularly I think towards the end, like going back to like I listened to a podcast with Kate kind of last week maybe that she did, and she was talking about having a manager and how it maybe would have helped us navigate through some of those kind of bits and pieces. And yeah, I don't disagree with that. Like, I think, like, as things got bigger and a bit more complicated, like, us kind of navigating through that stuff as was tricky. But equally, like, I think, like, we were difficult to work with. Like, we were like, we knew what we wanted, and we didn't like being told what to do. And like we were, prickly characters at times, like because we were very clear about what we wanted. Like, so we probably didn't always help ourselves sometimes because we were, we probably were. Like, I wouldn't have wanted to manage us, like, because I think we were kind of, very single-minded in our approach to things. But yeah, maybe it would have helped us kind of sort of navigate some of that stuff. Like, I think Rough Trade maybe, whilst it was great that they gave us all that freedom, like I think they had a part to play sometimes as well in helping us to navigate through some of those kind of bits and pieces in a way that maybe like they didn't. Like, their style was very just hands off, which is cool. When it worked, because it meant that we could just make the record that we wanted to make with very little input. But then when things were harder, or when things were kind of going a bit messy, like, and like when Dorian had the stroke and stuff, like they weren't particularly kind of hands on in like helping us navigate through that. Like, no one from Rough Trade like spoke to me about any of that stuff. Like, even just as a duty of care thing, like your friend has nearly died. Like, what are you? How are you? Like, they didn't really. That's not how they operated. So like, yeah, I think there's a bit of truth in that.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if that's maybe changed. I mean, there has been a bit of talk on the podcast about, like, say, lack of duty of care, like not as much awareness around mental health. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. Like, I think, like, you're kind of throwing all these people into these, like, it's a really intense kind of way to live your life. Like, if you're in a band and you're on tour, like, that's an insane thing to do. Like, it's an incredible thing to do. Like, it's brilliant. But I think you've got to be pretty robust to kind of navigate through that. And then I think, you throw in, like, all the kind of substances that are floating around, like drugs and alcohol, and like lack of sleep, and like probably pretty unhealthy like eating habits, and like all this kind of stuff that's going on. Like, it's pretty nuts, really. So I think, like, yeah, this may be kind of, and then like the pressure, like, I probably didn't get it as much because I was just the drummer. Like, no one really cared about me. I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, it's just the reality. But like, if you're Kate, like, you're in the eye of the storm a little bit there, a bit more maybe than I was. I'm very always very aware of some of the things that people said about Emma were like awful. Like, like, and Emma's like amazing. Like, she was like the best one. Like, Joe from Angular always said that she was what made the band. Like, she was the one that kind of gave us like our character. But like, some of the things that people said about her were horrible, and like Catherine the same. Like, that kind of pressure that's on people, for lots of different reasons, is not great, really. So yeah, there's probably an air of truth in that, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, let's go into the last few songs then. Um, Girls Aloud, I was listening to it earlier. It's undeniably a banger. Biology.
It's an absolute banger. It's definitely like the best song of that era, like, without a doubt. And one of the things that I always got really cross about, was, I remember when Arctic Monkeys covered like Love Machine, which is also a great tune. But everyone was like, "Oh, Love Machine's really good now," like, because somehow, like, Arctic Monkeys, like four guys with guitars had covered it. It kind of made it a good song. But actually, like, it's a great song anyway. You don't need like four guys with guitars to cover a song to make it a good song. Um, And I went to see. I really love Robert Wyatt. So Robert Wyatt's like probably my favorite musician. He's quite an obscure guy. Maybe I don't know if you know Robert Wyatt particularly, but he's fantastic. And around about this time, I went to see him give a talk. He doesn't play live anymore, and he was talking about how Girls Aloud were brilliant because like it's Saturday night music. It's people. It's music for people to go out on a Saturday night and like dance to and like forget about like their working week and forget about their troubles. And that's like the best kind of music. And I totally get that. Like it's music for people to just kind of you know enjoy themselves too. And it's an amazing song. Like it's just great. I like the way there's all these different parts to it. And yeah, it's banging.
Yes. And then I think you might be the first person to pick Good Shoes to play. But I mean, what a band.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I love Good Shoes. They're like of all the bands of that era, like hands down, like Good Shoes are like my favorite, like by a long way. I think they're amazing. I kind of still keep in touch with Reese, um, and then yeah, I just love them from like so my actual favorite record from that whole era is there's a demo that Reese gave me that's a Good Shoes the demo that he made of all the songs, and he hand drew the cover and it's just him on his own with a drum machine in his shed. And I just think it's absolutely amazing. Like it sounds like Young Marble Giants or something. It's like incredible, and that's actually my favorite record of the era. But
Oh, is that on the internet or
yeah,
anything? I wonder. I don't know.
it's not. I can't find it anywhere. It's just like a CDR that he like burnt himself. That he kind of
Right.
he kind of was handing out. So I think he gave one to like Joe from Angular had one. I think like Rory Phillips, who used to do Trash, had one. Like I got one. Like yeah, and I loved. They were just great. Like I think they really sort of articulate what it means to be like a teenager in a really like genuine and authentic way that I just think is incredible. Um, and like there's bits in this song that I just think like I was listening to the Strokes' first album recently, and I haven't listened to it for ages. And there's a bit in like where like Julian's singing about like when I was young, I did this. Like he's only like 21 or something, and he's already like nostalgic for like being young. Like, and that's what Good Cheese are like a little bit. Like they're already like world weary, and they're only like 19 or whatever. I kind of really love that. And the bit in this song where he talks about like the girl wears loads of top shop and he's so arrogant and they're like the perfect couple. Like it's just so evocative of like loads of people that you knew at that time. I just think it's great. I just love them. I also like one of my favorite experiences we had. We went to Greece to do a festival in the Olympic baseball stadium in Greece. And the lineup was Kaiser Chiefs headlining and then us and then Good Shoes. And like we just had such a good time with Good Shoes. Like they were just turned up like they were like teenagers on holiday. It was like one of them like just had um forgotten his shoes. He just had his slippers on for the whole time. And like they just yeah, they were just so disorganized and just chaotic. And like we just got really drunk and then we ended up like on the beach at like 5 a.m. and like it was great. Like I just loved them. I thought they were great and I think they're fantastic.
Okay, yes, well, here they are with Never Meant to Hurt You. Then the next one, not familiar with, Glass Candy. What can you tell us about this?
So Glass Candy was were a band kind of going back to kind of recording the second album, that were a huge influence on that kind of second kind of Long Blondes record, really, in terms of that kind of it's really sort of disco-y and really sort of synthy. And I just used to play it a lot out when I DJ'd a lot. I just think it's a really good song. And again, they're just a band that I think have just been a bit like forgotten about in the kind of narrative of that kind of era. Like maybe people didn't even know them to begin with. Maybe it's just my kind of obscure taste, but it's just a song that for me is really evocative of a particular sort of time. So um, we're down in London, like we're doing couples, like we're going out quite a lot. It's kind of, I guess, around that kind of new ravey kind of era. So it's kind of just got that kind of nice, kind of disco-y, dancey kind of like feel to it. And yeah, it's just very evocative of that period of time, really, for me, of doing couples and enjoying being down in London, really.
Okay, well, here's Glass Candy with Miss Broadway. And then you mentioned Robert Wyatt, so we're going to finish with him. Why this particular song?
So this particular song kind of reminds me very much of so when I was doing couples, we were recording couples. I just met like Anna, who's now like my wife, and I really love Robert Wyatt, and she really loved Robert Wyatt as well. And this song kind of came out kind of around the time, and it's a little bit cheesy, but it kind of just reminds me of like that period of like being in London, kind of falling in love with her. And like, I guess then kind of quite shortly after that, kind of the band ended. So it kind of is almost like for me, the sound of maybe like coming out of being in the band and like navigating into being something different and like resetting my life a little bit and kind of, settling down and having children and being in a family, which I love and I think that's great. And I'm really grateful that I got to do the band stuff, but I'm really grateful that I've kind of come out of that now, and I'm that's kind of like it just very is very evocative to me of that shift in priorities, maybe of thinking actually, like I've done this thing and it's really really cool and it's fantastic, but actually I'm going to go do this other thing now, and that's going to be equally as cool and fantastic, if not more so, because of the situation that I found myself in.
Okay, well, here's Robert Wyatt with Just As You Are. And then I thought to finish on, if you're up for it, we don't have to talk about it, but the story with Dustin's bar mitzvah that we chatted about on Instagram.
Yeah, we can talk about that. That's okay. That's absolutely
So,
fine.
what's the story there then?
So the incident definitely happened. So like it was at Joyfest, which was a hilarious event, which was put on by this guy who he was going to put out all these split singles with all these bands that were kind of around at the time. So there was like us and the Boyfriends and kind of the Violets, and I think Neil's Children are involved as well. So this guy's like kind of said he's going to press up all these singles, and he's putting on this festival, Joyfest, to kind of launch the singles. And I think as the kind of venue, as the gig approached, it kind of became very clear that this guy just didn't know what he was doing. So it was really kind of obvious that the gig was going to be quite chaotic. I don't even know whether the singles ever appeared. I can't remember whether they ever got released or not. Maybe they did. I can't remember. But like the singles weren't ready. Like it was just like a bit of a chaotic kind of day. So it was just like it was just really obvious that it was just going to like it was in the Hackney Ocean, which is this massive venue. Like there was just hardly anyone there. So and it was my birthday as well on that day as well. So kind of got to the venue, realised this is going to be a bit of a shit show. So us and Neil's Children, who were also playing later in the night, just think right, fuck this. Like we're just gonna go. And we're just going to get wrecked. So we just go over to the Weatherspoons, and it's like 8 a.m. or whatever, and we just get drunk. We just get absolutely hammered, like just drinking like triple gin and tonics, like at like 10 in the morning. So we then go back to the venue. I think we all did. We played the gig. We were all wearing sunglasses, like it was just kind of falling over or whatever. So I was fairly like inebriated. I'm not a violent man normally. I'm very calm and relaxed. But we go backstage, and there's another band playing. Um, it wasn't the Pipettes, but it was like somebody like the Pipettes, but it wasn't the Pipettes, but they're kind of like girl group kind of, and everyone's kind of getting changed. So like in the dressing room, so we're like, right, we'll kind of go and leave the room to leave people to get changed. And there was somebody in there that was just refused to leave the room. They were like, "Oh no, I want to stay and kind of look at what's going on," really, which is just a bit of a dick move, really, isn't it? So I kind of was like, come on, man, like that's not okay. Like you need to like come out. And he was like, no, I'm not going to do it. So I kind of just punched him, basically, because like I just thought like that's kind of not on. But and then afterwards, somebody told me that it was that guy's like the singer in Dustin's Bar Mitzvah, as if like I'd be bothered about. But I'd never heard of Dustin's Bar Mitzvah, and I didn't really know or care who they are, with all due respect to Dustin's Bar Mitzvah. So I just assumed that that's who it was. And the story that I've told people is that I punched this guy in the face and he's the singer from Dustin's Bar Mitzvah. But apparently it wasn't the singer from Dustin's Bar Mitzvah.
Well,
Um,
I think Dave's denied
he,
it,
well, he
but
denies it. He claims that it didn't happen.
yeah.
Maybe it was the guitarist from Dustin's Bar Mitzvah or another member of Dustin's Bar Mitzvah. I don't know. Um, but I still stand by the fact that like he was doing a bad thing, and I took the moral high ground. But I also punched him in the face, which is not cool. It wasn't my finest hour. Um, but um, but yeah, but I did. The guy from Dustin's Bar Mitzvah did kind of message me, and I did say that I would apologize if I'd committed a bit of light slander by saying that it was him. So yeah, apparently it wasn't him. Maybe it was. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. But you were told it was him. That was basically, yeah.
That's. I was
Fair.
told it was him. Someone said to me that's the singer from Dustin's Bar Mitzvah after it happened, and I was like, okay, yeah, but yeah. So that's what happened. But it definitely did happen. I definitely did punch someone, and I was definitely told that they were the singer from Dustin's Bar Mitzvah. Yeah. I think it's
Yeah.
like only like the second or third time I've ever like punched someone in my life. Like I'm not, I don't make a habit of punching singers from 2000 indie bands. It's not something that I, do a lot of.
Being an absolute enemy for her back in the day, though.
It would have been on area. It would have been all over the papers like a pissing puppy. Yeah, yeah, high scandal. Very exciting times. And then I don't really remember what happened after that. It all gets a bit hazy from that point on. But I do also remember part one of the things that happened that night was Jamie Reynolds was there, and he was talking about like this was before Claxons had started, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna revive rave." So he was like talking then about like how he was gonna revive rave. Me and Joe from Angular are gonna revive rave. We're gonna release all these like white labels, and that's what we're gonna do. So that was kind of like the start of new rave as well, just there. So yeah, monumental day in the life of indie music. I sometimes refer to it as our generation's Woodstock.
What is it? Joyfest, yeah.
Joyfest, yeah.
It's another documentary that needs to be made, I think.
Yeah. It'll be a great. There was a second day, but I don't know whether the second day actually happened. I think they ended up cancelling the second day. I can't remember. We played on the first day. Yeah, great. What time to be alive?